Welcome to the Dug in a Pub podcast, where I share thoughts, stories, and conversations about my life and my journey post-suicide attempt.
I'd like to begin with a fact.
So pull up a stool and let's see if we can change the world.
I'd like to begin with a fact.
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Dug in a Pub podcast. Today's episode is the second part of my conversation with Eliza Rickman. We talk more about relationships and some of the struggles she's had, and we go from there. But first, I'm going to start you off with another one of her songs called Maker of My Sorrow. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to talk about, or I'm trying to think if there were questions that I wanted to ask you.
I don't know.
So,
Yeah, I'm game for anything. It could be music, it could be life.
but you know, you've been very open about the struggles you've had with stress and anxiety, and
Yeah.
and there are other people that have done that too, and I think that's so. Well, that's why I share my story, and that's why I kind of started this podcast, was we need to talk about the fact that everybody struggles,
Yeah.
and struggling isn't bad.
Right.
It doesn't make you a bad person or weak or a failure.
Yeah.
It's rare there's a person who doesn't. So I guess the question I have about that, because you've been so honest and open with that in your on your Kickstarter letters and your Facebook page. How has the reception been for that? How much anxiety was there in opening up like that to start with?
It felt I had mixed feelings about it. It was overwhelming because I knew that it was going to take time to form the words that I wanted to say. Um, I didn't want to overthink it, I wanted it to be genuine, but I knew that it
Mm-hmm.
was just going to take a chunk of time for me to sit down and write out everything and make sure that I was communicating clearly. I wanted to be heard and understood, and um, it felt overwhelming, partially because, and I'm still kind of going through this. Time management and just feeling like there aren't enough hours in the day are a
Yeah.
huge anxiety trigger for me. I mean, I'm not the only one. Well, there's probably like 95% of people probably feel that way, especially if you're doing any type of entertainment or art.
Yeah.
But they're around, so I started really losing my mind over a year ago. Um, I've been with my current partner, Greg, for almost 2 years, and something that was, I think, would have been just a blip on the radar for most couples or
Mm-hmm.
people with like a healthy outlook on life and relationships. Something very little happened, and it triggered all of this PTSD from a past relationship that I haven't been in that relationship since the end of 2013.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and it really messed me up. Um, it broke my internal compass. It taught me, whether this is true or false, the lesson I learned from that past relationship was that um, no one is trustworthy, that I need to
Mm-hmm.
be on guard and protecting myself at all times. Well, you can't really be that way if you are trying to actually love somebody. Um,
Yeah.
and
Makes it hard.
so, yeah, I I kind of cracked last year, and I was forced to go into some really dark places, and it
Mm-hmm.
definitely got much darker before it got better. And my partner stood by me. I am very moved now when I think about all the stuff that happened and all that we went through and all of the terrible things that I said, things I broke, like just like things I threw on the floor, just like temper tantrum stuff.
Yeah.
I'd never been that way before, and I was treating the love of my life, like he was some sort of criminal because I was projecting all of this past shit onto him, and
Yeah.
um, he he didn't leave me, and he made me get help, and
Yeah.
there was just all this stuff going on, and I really put my professional life, for the most part, on a shelf. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't doing much of anything. And Greg booked us a couple of tours, some shows during that
Mm-hmm.
time. And honestly, if he hadn't done that, I'm not sure I would have done anything at all. Um, I really fell apart. Like, I was in bed all the time. I barely ate for a lot of that time.
Yikes.
Not because I was trying to starve myself, but because when I'm really distressed, I lose my appetite completely. He was like
Yeah.
force feeding me pizza a lot of the times because that's the one thing that I seem to always have an appetite for. Um, so during that time, because I had put so much on the shelf, I was also, life was going on without me. So I was getting emails from people, both personal and professional,
Mm-hmm.
and lots of, Facebook messages and Twitter messages and Kickstarter messages, and I just couldn't stay on top of it.
Yeah.
There were some that I read and I just didn't respond to in a timely manner. Some I never responded to, and I have every intention of going back through and, like, responding to every single thing. But it's going to take a chunk of time because
Yeah.
so much time passed while that was going on, and I felt really embarrassed. I guess that was a long way of saying that I felt nervous about opening up, and I ended up posting this really vulnerable thing
Yeah,
online
I
in
was,
like late January, I believe, and I was embarrassed because so I knew that many people who read that were going to be folks who I assumed were frustrated with me for not replying to their last message or their last comment or whatever,
yep.
because I do try so hard. I have tried so hard to respond to every single person. I don't take my fans for granted.
Hmm.
And I was nervous that people would be annoyed and frustrated with me. And I'm sure there are some people who did feel that way and maybe do still feel that way and they've kept quiet. But for the most part, I did it because I knew that I had to. I knew that I owed, I don't know if owed is the right word. I definitely
Hmm.
wanted people to understand that my career wasn't over. I was just getting so many messages of concern from people, and I wanted to. I knew then that it was time to release like a kind of a blanket statement and
Yeah.
slash like apology. And so when I did, I think I was in a parking lot when I wrote all of that out, and
Wow.
with AC on, um, and it didn't take as long as I thought it was going to take to write, and I posted it, and I just felt like the weight of the world off my shoulders. And then within, I mean, like within an hour, there was just such a huge outpouring of love and support, and just like, no, I was expecting at least one troll,
Yeah, you'd
and there were
think these days.
none.
Oh, that's
There
awesome.
were none at all. I'm sure there were some people who looked at that and rolled their eyes or thought I was trying to get attention or sympathy or something. But if that is
Yeah,
the
or make
case,
an
they didn't.
excuse.
Yeah, yeah. And if that's the case, they didn't say anything. And I mostly just got a lot of encouragement. Yeah. And I got more messages that I still haven't responded to because I was like, I was already overwhelmed by the pile of
Yeah.
messages. Um, so yeah, I had mixed feelings about it, but it was definitely necessary. And from the way that people were responding and reaching out, I felt I just felt so loved. Like
Yeah.
and and also realized that anxiety slash depression had been telling me in my head all these scary stories. Oh, everyone's mad at you. Everyone is annoyed with you.
Yep.
Um, that wasn't true.
Yeah, they talk about depression's a liar.
It
And
is.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I know when I saw that post, yeah, it was powerful. And I know Will Wheaton has done a bunch of that,
Hmm.
where he is just, man, I woke up today and I'm struggling and I can't get out of bed and I'm really
Yeah.
depressed. And
Yeah.
to me that was the amazing thing when you shared that was you're just laying it all out, and
Yeah.
you already felt vulnerable at that point, and then
Hmm.
you just said, "Oh yeah, just wait,"
Yeah.
and then you really let yourself out there, and
Yeah.
to come from a point of anxiety when you're feeling anxious to then turn it up a notch or four.
Hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was really amazing that you shared that, and I assume I'm not the only one of your fans who went, "Wow," just thanks for sharing that and for
Yeah.
letting everybody know that you know people struggle. And
Yeah.
I'm reading the comments and people's replies. I was watching for that troll too. Someone to go, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah," and and
Go into
and I'm like,
protective mode for Eliza.
"Yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I did." I'm like, "Oh, whose house do I have to go toilet paper now?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing,
It
the
was.
outpouring on that, and I see a lot of that online. There are always going to be trolls and the assholes out there just
Hmm.
going out there to pick on scabs because they can, and they're just
Yeah.
for whatever reason, that makes them feel better. And it's sad that there are people who live those lives.
Yeah.
I've seen more positive reaction to things
Mm-hmm.
like that
Mm-hmm.
recently, which is great because like I say, life's a team sport, and we're all on the same side, and our job is to help each other through this crap. When you shared that was really something. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can only imagine the stress as you're about to hit that's send button because it's
Yeah.
like, well, that's out there now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was really touched by a few things in particular. Um, there were several people who responded. Definitely a mix of different genders, but I think it was mostly women or people identifying as women
Hmm.
saying like, thank you for sharing that. I'm actually going through something very similar myself, and your
Hmm.
honesty helped me feel more brave and capable of taking this on. And I just felt like that's such an amazing gift to give people, and something I hadn't even thought about when I was putting
Yeah.
that out there. Um,
Yep.
so that was really touching. And I did get a few messages from people who've been in my life for a long time, people who knew me, like say former college professors,
Hmm.
uh, who have, you know, felt like I was, their child, and felt very protective of me. And I got messages of support and just telling me like how heartbroken they were because a
Yeah.
lot of them knew little bits, like a few pieces of the story, but just to
Hmm.
see it all laid out like that, that was really painful for some people
Yeah.
who care about me a lot. And my mom, I think, was looking through that thread looking for a troll. She was
Yeah.
going to protect her baby girl. And I remember her talking to my dad about it, and he said something like, I haven't been able to bring myself to read it yet. I'm going to have to psych myself up for that. And I sent
Yeah.
him a text afterwards, and I was like, I just want to give you a heads up. That's going to be hard for you to read,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
because I know how he is, and I know how protective he's always been of me. And
Yeah.
he, I'm going to cry just thinking about it. He responded it was something like, "You've never let me down. Don't worry, you know,
Yeah.
like don't worry about how much it's gonna hurt." And I think both my parents they're just relieved that I got out of that
Hmm.
situation when I did. I mean, it was unfortunate that I moved out of state and that it caught, like I went through all this gaslighting and
Yeah.
kind of not like an identity crisis. But I got out of it relatively quick. And I remember them being really happy about that when I called them seemingly out of nowhere and was like, I have to leave Portland and coming home. And I moved
Hmm.
back in with them for a little while. Um, and um, they also, I don't think anybody really knew how much Greg and I were struggling because of, all this stuff that I was
Yeah.
projecting onto him. I mean, I was making up the craziest stories and accusing him of the weirdest shit, like things that I can laugh about now because they were that bonkers.
Yeah.
But it's heartbreaking. I mean, I think about that and all the pain I put him through. And yeah, my parents, his parents didn't realize that we were struggling so much. And they were very moved by my vulnerability and just really supportive of him.
Hmm.
And I think the thing that, just because I love him so much, the thing that surprised me and made me feel the most emotional was how many people reached out to him in response to
Yeah.
my post, just to thank him for sticking by me and to tell him that if he needed support, that they were there, that they were on his team. And that meant so
Yep.
much to me and to him as well.
Yeah. I know. When we saw you guys at Thanksgiving, you know, we were watching you guys. Like, okay, are they fit? Is things good? Are things good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it's that protective mode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you guys seem like such a good fit.
Yeah. And we
Like you.
are. We always have been. But I
Yeah,
would do this thing where I would, like, every few days, I would just kind of snap and, like, go back to, putting all my walls up and
yeah,
just accuse. Yeah, I would just kind of like lose my shit every few days. And so it was very much like a walking on eggshells situation for him. Um,
yeah,
he's always been the same person. He's always been the wonderful partner
yeah,
that he is now. But I was having a very hard time seeing him for who he was because I was so
yeah.
scared.
Well, the mind is great at attaching all that past baggage to current
Yeah.
things because
Yeah.
that's your frame of reference.
Yes, it
So
is.
if you eat spaghetti once and it was really
Mm-hmm.
spicy, the next time you go to eat spaghetti, you're expecting it to be spicy.
Exactly.
So you have this relationship that you're gaslit and it goes terrible. You get
Mm-hmm.
another one, and you see one or two tiny things that seem similar.
Mm-hmm.
So that means everything's the same.
Yeah.
And then you just go down that road and you're just waiting for that shoe to drop.
Yeah.
And it's not dropping, so then you try to
Right.
make it drop. Then you're pushing the
Yes.
buttons to
Definitely.
get it to happen. And it's yeah, the fact that he saw that for what it was and
Yeah.
that he waited and he was patient and he didn't, from what I saw, he didn't attack you, he didn't accuse you.
No, never.
He's like,
Never.
you know what? I'm sure somewhere in his head he's like, this is just something she needs to figure out,
Yeah.
that I'm not the last guy. I'm not
Yeah.
that guy who did the bad things. I'm
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And, eventually you were able to put the crap back in the past where it belongs
Yeah.
and separate it out and go, oh,
Yeah.
these are two different things. And yeah, the brain is, if we knew how it worked, we'd be dangerous.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that was,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, no, I was going to completely change topics.
No,
So,
I guess I just wanted to mention that I really, when I posted that, I think I had just begun doing EMDR therapy and I was on a mix of anxiety medication and antidepressants. And since then, I've done several EMDR sessions, and it has been such a game changer. Like, I really, this is not exaggerating, it definitely saved my relationship
wow,
and my
awesome.
sanity. And I highly recommend it for anybody who's been through trauma. Even if you don't think you've been through trauma, you would be surprised at how your brain takes something that was like maybe even just mildly bad, and it just gets stuck in a certain area of the
Yep.
brain. And yeah, I was very lucky. I was very blessed that my poor partner, he called. I remember I had just had a really bad night, and he called his therapist and asked for phone numbers of the other trauma therapists, and he had a list, and he would not leave the room until I called and spoke to and made an appointment with somebody, and I
Wow.
did, and I went in, and I mean changed it changed everything. And even just from the very first reprocessing session of EMDR, I was able to see kind of where and why my brain makes certain connections, and there's something
Hmm.
very healing about that. And when I was kind of nervous about stopping the sessions to go tour Europe with Greg for 7 weeks. It was going to be
Hmm.
just us together
Yeah.
24/7, and it ended up being incredible because I was able to take all the things that I'd been working on in therapy and applying
Hmm.
them to the situation that we were in. And I noticed just all these, maybe they see changes that maybe seem small, but they were huge for me. Like, just for example, and I'm definitely being vulnerable right now because I probably sound like such a crazy girlfriend, but um, it's all in the past. Once in a while, I mean, Greg is a very good-looking young man. He's
Hmm.
gorgeous. Like, he could have been a supermodel if he
I
wanted to
can't
be.
argue with that.
Yeah.
So,
And I the relationship I was in a few years ago, that guy was not handsome. My mom made that was like the first thing she said when she found out that he had been cheating on me with everybody in town. She was like, "But he's not beautiful." But he was a master manipulator and a charmer, and he would always be on his phone, like always be texting or sending Facebook messages, and it turned out it was, he was blowing up all these other girls' phones. And
Yeah.
there's those traumatic memories and feelings from someone I loved being on their phone that I projected onto Greg. And I remember at times I just having to like calm myself down when I'd see him on his phone. I have to be like, Eliza, just because he's on his phone doesn't mean he's like sexting some girl, know?
Yeah.
And then on this last tour that we went on for 7 weeks, I did not have a thought that even resembled that at all whatsoever. Like if he pulled out his
nice.
phone and texted someone, I was like, oh, it's either, his mom or the guy who's babysitting our bonsai tree. I was just like so much more rational and even keeled than I was even 6 months prior. And it was really powerful and just very rewarding and exciting to see how much my thought process has changed from this type of therapy. Yeah. And it was wonderful. It was such a great experience.
That's awesome. Yeah. And just that putting that all in perspective thing and putting things in the right place. Because, we're humans. We are, what is it? Homo categoris, I've heard humans called once. Like we were talking earlier, we want everything in a box.
Yeah.
And it's got to have a category and it's got to be where it belongs. So everything like that is like that.
Yeah.
But to learn to understand that that's not the case, that everything is actually different and every person is different and has their own motivations and reasonings and things. But, Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dug in a Pub podcast. I have another Eliza Rickman song coming up for you. Before then, thanks for listening. Please spread the word. The more listeners that I have, the more questions I get, the more things I'm able to talk about. So Doug at duginapub.com is my email address. You can find me at duginapub.com, Instagram, Twitter, all the good places. Thanks again to Robert from the Brewdog News podcast for doing my editing for me. And thank you again to the band formerly known as Oh My Love for providing the music for me. Thanks, and keep listening and spread the word.